Welcome back to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. We're so glad you are joining us in and listening. Wherever you may be getting your podcast from, be sure to like and subscribe and do all that fun stuff to support us. I'm sitting here with two co-hosts, Caleb Talley and Jeff Amerine. Guys, how are we doing today?
Fantastic.
Doing great. Glad to be here.
It's great college football weather right now.
Absolutely. It's finally starting to get a little cool around here. Well, I'm very excited about our guest today. He's got a definitely a long resume, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Louis Bowen. He is the executive chairman and director of finance for Pacific GeneTech Limited, which he co-founded in 2009. He also currently serves as the chairman and CEO of Asia Capital Management Limited, a private investment banking company based in Hong Kong that he founded in 1994, if I'm correct on that. Louis, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Davis. Thanks very much. Thanks for the introduction. It's good to be here. I appreciate you inviting me to come on.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you.
Louis, why don't you give us the origin story? Kind of start with, we know you're a University of Arkansas grad, but give us the origin story so people can understand more about what your journey's been like.
Great. I'm happy to share that. That's right. I'm a native Arkansan and went to the University of Arkansas. Back in the days, actually, when Arkansas had some really good football teams. Mm-hmm. We picked that out. And anyway, so I graduated from the university with an economics degree, and from there I went on to graduate school at the Wharton School in Philadelphia to get a advanced degree, master's degree in finance. And then after that, I went to work for Citibank in New York. So, University of Arkansas was a great starting point for me, and it led me on to getting into finance and really a window onto the world. I joined Citibank, and this is really, if we want to make it apropos of the theme of the podcast, this is the beginning of my entrepreneurial activity, if you will, because I joined a department of Citibank which had just been set up. It was Citi's first attempt to get into investment banking, even though they were not allowed to do it domestically because of Glass-Steagall. But they wanted to do it internationally, and they started recruiting MBAs for the first time to do that and train them and then send them overseas. And I thought, what a great idea. I'd love to join something like that, be somewhat of a pioneer. So I joined Citibank and trained for 5 years in New York. And my colleagues were going around the world to different places. And of course, the choice place for everybody was London, the most exciting place. And I drew the Hong Kong straw. And, but with hindsight, it's been just an amazing experience. Got to spend the last 40 years in the most dynamic growing region of the world. And so I came out here, and my job as a 28-year-old was to find out if we could do investment banking in the Far East, if Citi could do investment banking in the Far East. So I was a pioneer in that regard. And after 5 years of doing that and getting to know the region, I looked around and said, the real opportunity is to be involved in equity investing in this region, to take advantage of the rapid growth. All you had to do was look at the growth rates annually of the stock exchanges, and they were well into double digits and sometimes 20% a year compared to the developed countries' market growths of 4 or 5%. And it was exciting. So I wanted to be a part of that. And I joined up with a group of people, and we formed, and this is again part of the sort of the entrepreneurial track, formed one of the first private equity firms in the Asia Pacific region. And we did that in 1981. And off we went from there, and had a great run. And then in 1992, I decided to set up my own firm, Asia Capital Management, which is what I did, which got off the ground in 1994. And anyway, it's been quite an interesting journey. And again, We've been involved over the years in a number of things. For example, we did the first Asian IPO in the United States in 1984 as a company called Universal Furniture. And up until that time, there had been secondary listings of Asian listed companies, mostly out of Japan, but no Asian company had actually done their IPO on a US market until Universal Furniture. That was a breakthrough. And then we had several others like that. And we were investing in, our theme was consumer spending. We were going to ride the wave of growing Asian consumer spending. So we invested in a lot of companies related to consumer products and services over the years. And anyway, so it's been very, very interesting. And then, of course, as I spent a lot of time here, I started looking around for other things to do than just be involved in managing money for other parties. And I wanted to start doing things, to give back in some ways. And that's what led me to Pacific GeneTech. So the story there is that the University of Arkansas reached out to me along with a number of other people in the Asia Pacific region who had experience with China and other places in the mid-2000s, first decade of 2000s, because Walmart and Tyson Foods and J.B. Hunt, so who were doing a lot of business out here, they thought the university needed to sort of up its game with regard to its interaction and involvement with this part of the world. So they started this outreach program to alumni who were here or could help. And as a part of that process, I went back to Fayetteville and I went on a tour around the different colleges, and they made presentations about what they were doing relevant to Asia. And at the Division of Agriculture, they made a presentation about a vaccine platform for animal health that they'd been working on for 5 or 6 years under the auspices of USDA, National Science Foundation, and others. That would be a breakthrough from a technological point of view, from a cost point of view, from an efficacy point of view, that would help the animal producers, primarily the poultry industry, which was the principal focus. And they asked if I could help them find parties to help commercialize it, because they developed proof of concept in Fayetteville, but they didn't know what to do with it now that they had the proof of concept. So they needed some help on that. And after consulting with some people who really understood this area, which I didn't, I had to obviously find people who did. And after doing that, I decided that rather than just making a few phone calls, which I didn't think would be very effective, I suggested to the university, I said, if I set up a company and I seeded it and had a plan for developing this technology, would you give me a license for it? Would you grant me a license? And they said yes, they would. So and I'm boiling down a story that unfolded over about a year's time, but that's what happened. And so in 2009, I set up Pacific GeneTech and in-licensed the vaccine platform, the platform of technology. And at that time, the focus was really on one vaccine, but it had the potential for expanding into others. And part of our job then was to not only take this platform out of the lab and into the field, but also to expand its applications. So over the last 10 or so years, that's what we've been doing. And it's been a very interesting to do. First of all, it's been somewhat challenging to do it from Hong Kong. And of course, the reason why it's in Hong Kong is because I'm here and because the CEO, who was the person I consulted, and I knew he had the experience to run a business like this. And I asked him if he would come in as CEO to run the business, which he did. And he was born and raised in Hong Kong. He's British by nationality, but he's originally from Hong Kong. And so the center of our management team is based in Hong Kong. But while it was challenging in some respects, in a way, it was actually fortuitous, because a lot of the work we did was when you start developing a technology, we took the model of calling on experts around the world who had special skills in areas that would help us in that development program. And so we called it horses for courses. And so we didn't spend a lot of money, capital into fixed labs and facilities and hire people on a full-time basis that had a particular skill base. We really reached out to multiple parties, and we grew a collaborator network, very, very substantial collaborator network around the world. We started doing trial work of the University of Arkansas Technology in various places in the US. We're also working, by the way, with Ohio State and Texas A&M and Guelph University in Canada, who are sub-licensees, or they're co-licensees with the university. They were involved in the original development. So we did quite a bit of work with those universities in addition to the University of Arkansas going forward in the development process. We've done work in Georgia, and we've done work now in the UK, we've done work in Taiwan, we've done work in Thailand, we've done work in Indonesia, and now we're starting to do work in Australia, where we're taking these vaccines out and putting them into the field and proving them both technically and commercially. And we've reached a very significant milestone of having our first commercial licenses, which we entered into a little over 2 years ago. And so anyway, that's what started off as it was really, I wanted to help the university. I wanted to really be involved with the university, and it turned out it's been really interesting. And as a result of that, I now spend about 50% of my time on Pacific GeneTech. It's become really important for me, and also now that we've hit these commercial milestones, we've now made a commitment that we're going to establish a facility in Northwest Arkansas, and we're moving down the road on that pretty nicely. And we're going to be manufacturing an adjuvant that we use in our vaccines, and we're going to be setting up an R&D lab, which will help us take control over some of the research and development processes that we've been outsourcing to CROs in the past. And also, we're going to continue to work on a collaborative basis with the University of Arkansas for developing other products, as well as other universities. In other words, we're really planting a flag there. The center of gravity of our management is going to move into Northwest Arkansas, and we're really excited about that. So it's sort of come full circle, and very happy about that.
Just listening to you describe that, the one thing that not many people have an appreciation for, not most entrepreneurs have an appreciation for, is how long cycle commercialization of intellectual property is, particularly as it relates to human or for that matter, even animal health. It requires a kind of long-term commitment and patience. You've been at this now essentially since 2009. I don't think people that are on the outside fully appreciate what kind of a long-term commitment that requires to get really meaningful stuff to market. So, I mean, it's admirable. But when you started, did you have an idea that it was going to be 15, 20 year journey?
No, I didn't. But you're absolutely right. There are very long cycles associated with it. And of course, it's all related to public health. Even though it's animal vaccines, most of our vaccines are related to human food safety. So our first two vaccines are very much oriented toward human food safety and helping the producers make sure that they don't have problems with the products that they put into the market. I mean, and the problems in animal health are being reflected in human health today in terms of the constant mutations and growing emergence of infectious diseases. Same is true in animal health, and so there are a lot of gaps in the ability of producers to deal with some of the infectious disease problems, and then there are There are also areas where the legacy vaccines are not doing a particularly good job, and they're being outstripped by the diseases themselves. And then you've got the whole antimicrobial problem with antibiotics and the move away from using antibiotics. So if you take away that solution from dealing with disease, you really have to look at prophylactic solutions, which means better and more efficient and more cost-effective vaccines is what you have to do. And I will say this, that the COVID situation has really presented an opportunity. We've all observed how fast regulators can move when they need to. And I think this has set a new bar for regulators, and not just at the FDA or for humans. We sense that it's also being shared on the animal health side, which is controlled, of course, by the USDA. And at least for the U.S. market, that's really important. And we believe that there's an opportunity to see accelerated timelines from a regulatory point of view. And then from a development perspective, I think we've learned a lot of lessons. I mean, we were really pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps. So we learned a lot of lessons about how to efficiently do the development work that's required for these products. And I think we've gotten much better at it in managing that process. And so I think we've been able to manage our timelines a lot better than we had in some of the early days. So hopefully that'll begin to show up in our ability to bring products to the market. So our first two licenses were what we call our first cohort of Aegis vaccines, by the way. We call the University of Arkansas Technology Platform our Aegis platform. And we brought those first two lead vaccines to the market. Now we have a second cohort of 5 vaccines that we're in the development process on. And so that's our next challenge. And I think we're already demonstrating in ways that we're being much more efficient about how we're taking on that development work. And also we understand the regulatory pathways a lot better than we have in the past. So hopefully we're getting better at that. But you're right, the timelines are quite long, but the need has increased in the market. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
You would think that the industry would be really good at developing new products to solve the problems, but the same phenomenon has happened in animal health that happened in human health, where the big pharma, the big companies, really cut back on their R&D work some 20, 30 years ago. And they haven't really been reinvesting that much. And they've left it to companies like Pacific GeneTech to come along and do that work, and then develop the products. And then, of course, they're interested in licensing them, or possibly even acquiring, the companies that are doing this development work to acquire technology. So there's definitely a need out there for more of these vaccines, and we're looking forward to continuing to develop new products in addition to bringing products to the market that we have.
Hey folks, Jeff Amerine here. Thanks again for tuning into the Startup Junkies podcast. Steve Blank, the father of modern entrepreneurship, recently called the book that Jeff Standrich and I wrote, Creating Startup Junkies, a must-read playbook for anyone who wants to kindle innovation and entrepreneurship in their community. This whole idea of building sustainable venture ecosystems in unexpected places gives you the tools, the techniques, and the inspiration to do what we've done in Northwest Arkansas and Central Arkansas in your neck of the woods. If you'd like to find out more, check out creatingstartupjunkies.com. Thanks again. Well, I know around the time that you licensed this technology that Dr. Billy Hargis was one of the principally key people behind, there was a big scare or concern that I think it was H5N1, which was avian flu, was going to make the jump in a direct way from flocks of birds to humans. And there had been maybe isolated instances where they think that had occurred, but they're periodically we're having to wipe out an entire broiler house full or more when they would get an indication that this stuff was starting. Is that one of your targets for the platform, H5N1, or is that something you're working on?
It is one of our targets, and it was actually the initial target. I mentioned that there was a first vaccine, and then because the globe got a handle on that problem pretty much, particularly in the countries where it was most a concern, which was actually Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia, yeah.
And so the jump into the U.S. market and other markets, which would have created a more compelling economic driver there, did not materialize. And we did work on it, and we did a lot of work in Indonesia, for example, which is where it was one of the endemic locations, and we got a candidate for it. Question is the market. So we have it on the shelf. And we can bring it out if it becomes a problem where we think that the additional investment in that product will be worth the return. But while we were doing that, there were two other candidates that Billy was working on. One for Salmonella for poultry, and the other one is for a parasite called Eimeria. And both of those problems are serious. They are probably the two most damaging economic problems for the poultry industry. And they're constant problems. And not only are they constant problems, but you read about the Salmonella outbreaks. Well, a lot of the Salmonella outbreaks are not necessarily associated with poultry. So a lot of that comes from cattle, actually. But there are some poultry-related outbreaks from time to time. And the problem for the producers is that it creates problems for their brands. It causes a significant cost. It's not only the cost of cleaning up a problem, but it's also an impact on their brands. So they're really concerned about the possibility of these outbreaks. So our Salmonella and our Eimeria vaccines are new technologies, and they offer new solutions. They offer what's called cross protection, which I'm sure you read about with regard to COVID. Everyone's wondering how cross protective the COVID vaccines are. Will they take care of the new emerging variants? And that is one of the things that the Poultry Health Lab there in Fayetteville and Dr. Hargis was working on for the government, was to develop vaccines that could provide cross protection against multiple strains of Salmonella and even across species, and provide protection with E. coli at the same time. And in the case of Eimeria or coccidiosis, there are multiple strains of coccidiosis that affect poultry. There are about 5 that are really important. And our vaccine provides protection against all 5 of the economically important strains. And it's also what's called an inactivated vaccine as opposed to a live vaccine. This is the other thing. This vaccine technology has a very good safety profile. And there are a lot of the legacy vaccines. If you talk to the producers, like your friends down at Tyson's down the road, they'll tell you that a lot of vaccines cause almost as many problems as they solve. And so having a good safety profile with these new recombinant vaccines that was developed there in Fayetteville is a real advantage.
Guys, jump in. Don't let me dominate all the airtime. I could totally geek out on this stuff from my days in tech transfer.
I'd be interested, Louis. I know you, Pacific GeneTech had a raise last year, I think it was. I'd be interested to hear you speak to, I guess, comparing and contrasting the process of raising capital, both domestically there for you in Asia versus raising capital in the United States, and just what that process is like. Maybe it's the exact same, maybe it's different. I'm just curious.
That's a great question. And it's not the same. And so you probably could surmise that raising capital in the U.S. for a company that's based in Hong Kong, even though our technology and really a substantial part of our market focus is in the U.S., it hasn't been easy. And so in our, we had sort of traditional early rounds of seed capital and what you call A round, but really we didn't follow the traditional VC nomenclature on our fundraising. And our A round was really part of our C round, if you will. Our seed round. And then our B round was also almost an extension of our seed round. So, but what we were doing was we were fundraising as we were going along and as we were identifying the funds we needed. And we did our first sort of a fund placement, if you will, which in our C round, where we placed it with one fund based in the Bay Area in the US. That's the first time we reached into the US for money. Previously, it had been basically friends and family and a lot of people in Hong Kong. And then after that, the next round, we were approached by an investment bank in Taiwan who offered to lead another round, and which they did. And then they pitched that they could take us public on the Taiwan Stock Exchange. So they led that round, and then the public listing on the Taiwan Stock Exchange didn't materialize. But with the benefit of hindsight, we're somewhat happy that didn't work out. And then the next, we started the E round, which is what we're doing now, and that is focused on getting the second cohort of Aegis 2 vaccines off the ground, and also funding, our startup operation in Northwest Arkansas, and that's being funded in part by our existing investors from the D round, as well as some new parties that are coming into the company. So, and of course, we're in this time we're focusing more on the U.S. than we had in the past, because it's a significant part of our funding is going to be used for getting us really established with our operation in the U.S.
That's very interesting. Louis, I know you mentioned earlier about the growth of Asian markets and kind of how y'all use that to your advantage. What's that look like these days? Is that still experiencing the same amount of growth compared to, obviously more developed markets?
Yeah, it very much is still the case. The Asia Pacific region is still growing at significant rates, and it's also true for our industry in animal health. It's still a very, very significant growth factor because of the increased demand for protein in this part of the world, and rising standards of living, of course, ability to consume the protein. So yeah, this part of the world is still very much a driver of growth, and I think it will continue to be. So while our move to the U.S. is really to get established there and to meet the requirements of our licensees, which are based in the U.S., and also to get closer to the origin of our technology, so we can do more work to develop that technology and new technologies. We still are going to keep a focus on Asia Pacific, because we know that this is a critical market going forward.
Follow-up question to that, Louis, is for the longest time, Hong Kong was viewed as the easiest place to do business in the world in many respects. I mean, the low red tape and the ability to get things started and raise capital and all that, kind of a jewel. And one thing, as an outsider, someone that has done business in Pacific Rim and remembers the days before the turnover and whatnot, to the extent that you're willing to talk about it, how is it now? I mean, we've seen all the stuff in the news about the crackdowns and central government control. Is it still that fertile place for all the entrepreneurial activity and still a good beachhead for the Pacific? How would you characterize it?
It's definitely changed, Jeff. There's no question about it. I mean, Hong Kong is becoming rapidly, integrated into mainland China. It's definitely losing some of its individual identity, and I think that's by design, by government policy, and associated with that, I think is somewhat of a lost sense that you can start a new business here, or you can be as entrepreneurial as you could in the past. I don't think there's any question about that. It's still an extremely functional place. I mean, it's, everything works here other than the fact that we can't travel because of the COVID restrictions. But other than that, it's still very open. We can do business here just as easily as we used to be able to do in the past. It's a great place to do business from. But there's definitely a change in the atmosphere. There's no question about that.
So are we going to see you walking around the Fayetteville Square anytime soon? Once that Fayetteville,
yeah, I was supposed to be there in August. I was supposed to be there in August, but I think you all had a COVID issue in August in Northwest Arkansas. And so I was in San Francisco at the time, and I was planning to go, and I had to cancel the trip. But yeah, I want to get there fairly soon, and need to. And also our CEO Tim Collard will probably be coming along with me. We're working with a lot of great people there in Northwest Arkansas. It's just been, and one reason why we chose Northwest Arkansas is we wanted to be close to the source of technology. We want to continue to do work with the university. That's driver number one. But also we knew we'd be well received there, and we have been. It has been fantastic. I mean, it's just the outreach from with Jeff, and but also parties like Northwest Arkansas Council and Arkansas Innovation and the state AEDC units. We have a commitment, by the way, from ADFA for our round of funding to support the project in Northwest Arkansas.
Fantastic. That's great.
Yeah, and of course that's contingent on closing the round, but
sure,
it's there, and we're excited about that. So we're getting great support, and that makes us feel good. We think we found a location, although it's a lot of work yet to be done on that, but we've made good progress there. The one area where we're still working hard is on the HR side, because we need someone to run our U.S. business, and that person's going to be really important for our company going forward. C-level position, and that's our first key hire, and we're diligently looking for that person. And then on the heels of that person, we have two more key hires, including our global director of R&D, and then of course the person who is going to be running the manufacturing facility and managing the lab in Fayetteville. So we've got some key positions to fill over the next 12 months, and that's really one of our primary focuses at the moment.
I mean, it's an exciting development, and the whole story is really exciting with the prospect of you and aspects of the team kind of boomeranging back and building major presence, and using Northwest Arkansas as kind of that catalytic hub for all that happens next in North America. I mean, it's a fantastic story. The first time we began to engage and have conversations, I was like, this is the kind of thing that needs to happen a lot more often, where people have gotten involved with the technology and have done great things in other regions, and then figure out ways to bring it back. And I have to tell you, the DNA of the area, as you well know, is exactly as you described. People are receptive. They want this kind of stuff. They're going to figure out how to make it work. And I'm glad to hear you say that, having been away and then being back in the mix, it's encouraging to hear that we're doing some things the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very, very impressed about it. And it makes us feel good. It makes our existing shareholders feel good, our board, and it's going to ensure that we continue to have great support from them. So, yeah, and we think it's definitely the right move for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, from a broader perspective, is that one of the things that we hope to do is there's a real skill, and I think you know this, Jeff, from your period as a technology transfer professional. There's a real skill in being able to take technology sort of out of the lab and and turn it into a reality.
Yeah.
That's, some people refer to it as the valley of death.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our challenge, was to get through the valley of death. And we've done it because we've now commercialized products from this technology, and we're going to be commercializing more products from this technology, and we're going to be manufacturing one of the products. That's a skill. We learned a lot of lessons over the last 10 years, and we think we can apply that skill for other opportunities, and maybe even share some of those skills with other parties that want to do that. And it's a real problem that universities and other research institutions have. They develop great technologies, but then they don't know how to take it forward, and they don't know who the people are that can take it forward. And we hope that that's something that we will bring to Northwest Arkansas as well.
We need it. We need it for a lot of reasons. I mean, in kind of the macro sense, as fantastic as the area is, we're still extremely reliant on three big players, and one in particular, a lot of account concentration in some sense. And so one of the things that we say from an economic development standpoint is we need $100 million a year companies that aren't directly tied to retail or supply chain, as an example, so that we've got that kind of diversity. And something like this that's a platform for both animal and human health is exactly the kind of thing that you can draw that line back to the university and some of that sort of embryonic work that was done there, so to speak, to creating a company that's going to improve lives and employ lots of people. So, I mean, it's a fantastic story. And to the extent that you stay motivated to continue to do that, we're going to encourage you every step of the way, because we need it big time. I mean, it's exciting for sure.
You mentioned human health. I just wanted to pitch in on that for a second. So originally the technology was obviously aimed at animals, poultry initially, but we've done some early preclinical work on our Salmonella vaccine, which, as I mentioned, is cross-protected to E. coli. And we also have some data from work that we did with the US Army in Thailand to show it's also cross-protective against ETEC, and in mice in this case. So we're now working with Oxford University in the UK on a program where we're going to do some serious trials, further preclinical trials for that vaccine for the first, and it would be a first, human gastrointestinal anti-dysentery vaccine.
Wow.
There is not one in the world. The closest is one vaccine for cholera, but that's different. And so it's really an exciting part of what we're doing. And to think that the technology that was developed in Billy's lab there in Fayetteville for chickens might end up being a vaccine that could prevent many other 1.5 million deaths that occur annually globally due to dysentery and gastrointestinal diseases. And that's kind of a moonshot that we have right now as part of our plan. But we're very serious about it, and we've got a really good team in the UK that's working on this.
It's very exciting. Caleb, I think we're at about that time to land the plane.
Absolutely. Louis, we always ask our podcast guests this question, and of course, we're going to throw it at you as well. If you had the ability to go back in time, knowing everything you know now, all the knowledge you have gained over the years, and you could give your younger self advice, whether it's in 2009, back when you were, getting this off the ground, or even, when you first stepped foot in Hong Kong, what advice might you give yourself?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, on the personal side, I think that's a pretty easy one for me. I think you hear people talk about life balance all the time, and I think that's absolutely critical. But I think within life balance, I think it's having something that you're really committed to, outside of your professional work, and of course outside your family, even though your family really takes priority there. But I think having something that's yours, that is really a passion for you, I think that's really important. In my case, it became mountain climbing, and I got into mountain climbing about 25 years ago, maybe it was 30 years ago. It was 30 years ago, and it really was a driving force in my life for a long time, and really helped create the balance for me. On the professional side, I think if I were being self-critical, analyzing myself and over those years, I'd say that I probably felt as though I could solve more problems than I could. That you in the investing world, nothing goes in a straight line. There's nothing linear about investing in early stage businesses, and you're going to have problems, and some of the problems, unfortunately, are going to be unsolvable. I had this can-do spirit that I can solve every problem, and there are times where I shouldn't have taken that position. I just should have accepted the fact that I can't solve this problem, and therefore I'm not going to waste the next year trying to solve that problem. And I could have done a lot more mountain climbing if I had taken advice. So anyway, I think those are the two things that I would pass on to parties. And I think most people have this penchant for wanting to solve the problems and solve all problems. And it's tough to make a decision to just accept the loss, if you will, just move on down, go on to something else, turn the page. It's hard to do for a lot of people. And I think that's something that you just have to learn to do, I think, because not everything is a bowl of cherries.
Yeah, no doubt.
Forrest Gump said.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for coming on. It's been fantastic conversation. And if the listeners want to find out more, the viewers want to find out more about Pacific GeneTech or what you've done, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I think we have a pretty good website, and it's pacificgenetech.com, all one word, lowercase. And you can go on that and read about the company, and then you can also get in touch with us through the website. That's a pretty straightforward way of doing it, and you can get in touch with me through the website. And so I'm more than happy to be available to talk to people, and I'm quite approachable, and I'm at the stage in my life where I really admire young people who have ambitions in the area of venture capital and investing. It's something that's really important to me, and actually business education has become another important part of my life. I'm on the Dean's Advisory Board there at the university, at the Walton College, with Matt Waller, who I think is just a superstar.
I agree.
And then I'm also on a similar board for Hong Kong University of Science and Technologies, which is the leading business school, not only in Hong Kong, but it's always rated in the top 1, 2, or 3 in Asia. And its executive MBA program is ranked #1 in the world.
Wow. Wow,
It's
good
a
stuff.
it's a good program. So I you know I believe in education, and so I'm happy to talk to students and young people who are looking for guidance and mentoring.
Thanks so much for coming on, and we're looking forward to more collaboration as you get things stood up in Northwest Arkansas, and we're here to help and as a resource, and we're just so excited by everything you're doing. Thanks so much.
Well,
Louis,
thank
it's
you
been
for
an
having
absolute
me.
pleasure. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Right. All right. Have a good day. We'll see you.